History is not only what is written, it's what is remembered and what is erased. For generations, one story was told, while another was buried. The African American experience is not a footnote. It is the foundation, built in the shadows, brilliant in silence, resilient under pressure. These are the voices left out of textbooks, the communities erased from maps, the brilliance history forgot. This is not a rewrite of the past, it is the missing truth. To understand America, we must finally see it whole.
Segregated shores, America's beaches and resorts. Along America's sunlit shores, freedom once ended at the water's edge. During the Jim Crow era, African Americans were systematically barred from most public beaches, hotels, and resorts. Segregation laws, and the violence that enforced them, made rest, recreation, and even ocean air a privilege denied. But exclusion did not erase the human need for joy, dignity, and escape. So Black communities built their own. From coastlines and lake shores to tucked-away resort towns, African Americans created spaces where families could swim without fear, dance without restraint, and breathe without apology. These beaches and resorts became sanctuaries, places of laughter, music, romance, and renewal, where Black life could exist fully, even under the shadow of segregation. They were more than vacation spots. They were acts of resistance. This is the story of those hidden shorelines and summer havens, of resilience shaped by exclusion and beauty born from necessity. This is the history of segregated beaches and resorts, and the communities that transformed them into symbols of freedom. This multi-episode series will tell the history of 12 segregated beaches and resorts, and the communities that transformed them into symbols of freedom. American Beach, Bruce's Beach, Buckrow Beach, Carr's Beach, Chicken Bone Beach, Highland Beach, Idlewild, Oak Bluffs, Pleasure Island, Sag Harbor, the Ink Well, and Virginia Key Beach. Atlantic City sold itself as a playground for America, a place where the ocean met indulgence, where music drifted from ballrooms and the boardwalk promised escape. Bright lights, big bands, endless leisure. But like much of America, paradise here was divided by race. Just steps away from grand hotels and neon signs existed another Atlantic City, one built on restriction, resilience, and quiet defiance. Here, Black Americans carved out joy on borrowed ground. On a narrow strip of sand they were allowed to occupy, but never meant to claim. They called it Chicken Bone Beach. By the early 20th century, Atlantic City had become one of the most popular resort destinations in the nation. Millions arrived seeking rest, pleasure, and spectacle. White visitors moved freely, from hotels to theaters, beaches to ballrooms. For African Americans, the city offered opportunity, but only in service. Black men and women worked the hotels they could not stay in, served meals they could not eat, performed music they could not sit and enjoy. Segregation here did not always rely on posted signs. It was enforced through custom, intimidation, and silence. The shoreline itself became divided. Black beachgoers were restricted to a narrow stretch near Missouri Avenue. No wide sands, no amenities, no protection. This was Chicken Bone Beach. The name Chicken Bone Beach was not chosen with pride. It was a slur. White beachgoers mocked black families who brought food from home, fried chicken wrapped in paper shared among relatives. What was necessity became ridicule. What was survival became stereotype. After picnics, chicken bones remained in the sand, and the insult took hold. But something unexpected happened. Black Atlantic City reclaimed the space, and in doing so, reclaimed the name. Families returned every summer. Grandparents staked out familiar spots. Children learned to swim in waters their parents were never taught to trust. Portable radios played jazz and gospel. Laughter replaced shame. Here, dignity lived not in acceptance, but in presence. Chicken Bone Beach was not only a working-class refuge, it was a crossroads. By night, black entertainers filled Atlantic City's white-only clubs. Legends whose names lit marquees. They performed for packed rooms. They generated wealth they rarely enjoyed. By day, they came here. At Chicken Bone Beach, fame dissolved. Stars sat beside hotel porters. Headliners laughed with cooks and cleaners. Children played without knowing who was famous, or who was not. There were no velvet ropes, no backstage passes, no performance required. In a segregated city that demanded black excellence only for white enjoyment, this beach allowed black life to exist freely. Chicken Bone Beach reflected the complexity of Black America. Class differences existed, but here they softened. A hotel maid rested beside a headliner. A laborer picnicked beside a touring musician. The beach became a social equalizer, but survival was always present. Police harassment was common. Facilities were limited. Rules shifted without warning. This space was tolerated, never protected. And still, people returned. Because in a segregated society, simply showing up became an act of resistance. When segregation laws began to fall, Chicken Bone Beach faced a familiar fate. Access expanded, but memory faded. As Black Americans gained legal entry to other beaches, this narrow strip of sand lost its necessity. No preservation followed. No markers were placed. No official recognition came. The beach vanished quietly, absorbed into a rewritten narrative of Atlantic City. What survived lived only in stories. Chicken Bone Beach was never marked by monuments. Its legacy lives in memory, in laughter carried by the waves, in names passed down through families. It reminds us that Black history is not always found in grand buildings or preserved landmarks. Sometimes it lives in places people were never meant to belong, but claimed anyway. The tide comes in. The tide goes out. And beneath it all, the story remains. This is Chicken Bone Beach. This is the African American experience.